This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about UFOs, and we are definitely touching on something that's different than we normally teach about. But we thought it was interesting, and we decided to share with you what we've learned. And we do want to thank you for taking time to stop by our channel and to spend time with us. And we hope you enjoy this video. Definitely share it. Um, and Barbie, I'm gonna let you take over and just kind of talk a little bit more about what we're gonna be studying today.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about UFOs and aliens because there is such a big hype on UFOs and aliens and how we're seeing them everywhere. And when we talk about aliens, we're talking about aliens in connection with UFOs, other planets. We're not talking about aliens that come from like other countries. We're actually talking about the little green Martian men. And more specifically, we're going to be talking about UFO sightings that have happened. And why is there such a big hype about UFOs now? Now, I know in the 1940s through the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of hype. And then it kind of died down a little bit. But now it's like this big hype. And not only that, why is the government finally admitting that we have UFOs? You know, why were they denying it then? But now they're actually saying, okay, well, I think we might have seen some things. So we're going to dive in and find out.
Okay. And we kind of got this from a story we came across, and it happened back in 1938. And keep in mind that the Depression was rampant during this time. There were families that would sit around the radio after dinner and they'd listen to programs on the radio. World War II was gearing up. And of course, that was Adolf Hitler. He was on the rise. So this special was time that the families got together. It was special. It was time they could spend together and just relax. And it took them away from all the worry they were dealing with. Neighbors sometimes would congregate with each other. Like me and Barbie get on here all the time and talk, not just for videos. But they would go to their houses, they'd listen to the radio together, and they would listen to things like comedy shows, soap opera type shows. And even, FDR would do a show called The Fireside Chat. And he would, recognize difficulties American people were going through. But there was one Sunday evening in 1938 that families gathered together as always, and they would listen to the show on the radio. However, some of these families tuned in a few minutes late, and this is very interesting. I'm going to let Barbie pick it up from there.
Yeah, these families turned in a little bit late this particular night. You got to figure, they made home-cooked meals, and they had to do the dishes and do all these things. So sometimes they were running a little late. And I think these shows probably came on around 8 o'clock. So if you were on the show and it was like 5 after 8, you would miss the introduction. Okay. And there's a reason that we're mentioning that. So when the family got on, they were expecting like a comedy show to be on. They were just expecting to sit down, relax, and see this and hear this comedy show on the radio. But instead, they were hearing the sounds of the Roman Recuto, which is an orchestra. And they were supposedly playing from the place called Meridian Room in New York City. After a few minutes of listening to the orchestra, and you got to imagine these people were going, why is this orchestra playing? This is supposed to be hearing a comedy show. What did they change this for? But right in the middle of that orchestra playing, all of a sudden an emergency broadcast comes over the bulletin, and with the bulletin claiming that there was an alien invasion from Mars in a city called Grover's Mill in New Jersey. Now, at the beginning of the show, they announced it, but all these people didn't hear this. So all they're hearing is that, oh my gosh, we're being invaded in New Jersey from Martians. What's going on? And so, you got to imagine they're tuned to the radio, and they're, you see all the kids sitting down on the floor, and the parents have all got their chairs together and they're listening to the radio and they're just tuned into it going, what is going on? Well, if, the program was actually what they were doing is they were using a book by by a writer called H.G. Wells. And the book you probably have heard about was called War of the Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his big book. And he was, they were using that book to do this program. Okay. And that's what it's about, is the Martians. And in the book, what happens is the UFO lands and they're out there reporting about it. Well, all of a sudden it opens and tons of people are getting killed. So these people in the homes are hearing this and they're freaking out. I mean, they are freaking out because they think the Martians are here. Well, the put on this show was a man named Orson Welles, and he's not related to H.G. Wells, but his name is Orson Welles. And most of us, unless you're young, will probably know who Orson Welles was. But he's the one that actually put this show together. And during the show, people were calling the police departments, freaking out. There was rumors that people were jumping from windows because they were scared that they were going to be attacked by the Martians. Now, I don't think they ever really clarified that that was true, but that was the rumors, that people were literally jumping from the roofs and jumping out of their windows, just freaked out that the Martians were coming. And so people were calling in, they were calling into the show, they were calling the operators, and finally some of the operators got the information and realized that this was just a show. And so some of the operators were able to tell people, no, this is just a show. You just can't miss the beginning. And so they actually went to Orson Welles and asked him, stop the show before being killed. And Orson is like, no, I'm not doing that. And he wouldn't stop it. But about halfway through the show, they did report again that yes, indeed, it's just a show. Calm down, everybody be calm. And so he did do it, and he made sure people understood. But at this point, I think so many people were in a panic that they didn't all hear that this was going on. And here these families were sitting down around the radio. You got Adolf Hitler on the rise. You got World War II ramping up. You got depression. You got all these things going on, and all they wanted to do was sit down and relax. And all of a sudden, they're here and the Martians are here. So I'm pretty sure that didn't relax them. What do you think, Flora?
No, I'm sure it didn't. And you got to keep in mind nowadays, if something happens, what's our first thing we do? We pick up our phones or our computers and we look it up on the internet. But you got to remember, there was no such thing as the internet back then. I don't even think they had TVs. It was listening around the radio.
It was very limited. Yeah.
So we're not gonna go into all the detail of this entire story about what happened during this episode due to time restraints, but we did our own investigation because we found it interesting, and it shows how people even in 1938 were concerned about alien abductions. We found something interesting. The first UFO sightings were not reported until June 1947. And then from 1947 to 1969, there were over 12,000 UFO sightings. And there was an organization that was called the Project Blue Book. And it was a top secret Air Force team tasked with investigating these sightings to determine if it actually caused a threat to us. They were formed in 1952 after multiple sightings, and they confirmed if it took place due to the word getting out about the sightings and people beginning to panic. So you can see it's just kind of escalated over the years, so much so that our government felt like there needed to be a project in place to investigate these sightings. And Barbie, tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think during this 1938 episode broadcast with Orson Welles, I don't think people were necessarily overly concerned about it, but when that happened, it put the fear in them. I mean, they just were in it. You know, the first reported sighting, the one that was actually reported, was in 1947, and it was reported by a civilian pilot and a businessman named Kenneth Arnold. So it wasn't reported by just some person that had a mental problem maybe or something, and that's no disrespect by any means. It was reported by someone who had an education, was intelligent. He reported seeing 9 objects glowing bright blue and white while flying in a V formation at the speed of up to 1,700 miles per hour in the sky over Washington's Mount Rainier. Mr. Arnold compared the movements of those 9 objects to that of a saucer, like if you skipped it over the water. Hence where the name flying saucer came into being. And so as his reporting and the news of his reporting started to become known, all of a sudden sightings are everywhere. People are seeing them everywhere. There was one that was a very highly controversial report that appeared to be a UFO that crashed near a U.S. Army base in Roswell, New Mexico. The Army claimed it was a crash weather balloon. So, you know, because of the, in response to all these, because they kept getting so many UFO sightings, that they began to form, the U.S. Air Force actually formed what was called Operation Sign In 1948. That's what it was called. And then that was in 48. And then the Project Blue Book was actually formed a little later in 1952. And that was after a huge number of sightings began to pour in, and President Truman's administration became alarmed that there was going to be a lot of mass hysteria. And if you saw what happened in 1938 when Orson Welles just did a pretend show based off a book, you saw all that happen. You can imagine what people really reporting seeing them, because nobody really, you know, saw this supposed UFO that landed in New Jersey during the Orson Welles time. It was just that there was a report of it. But now you got people seeing it, you know, and so, you know, President Truman's like, ooh, his administration was like, we're about to have a panic. We got to put something together to start looking into this. And so that's where all that came into play. And then in addition, the CIA also responded to these reports, and they assembled an expert panel of scientists that was headed by physicist H.P. Robertson. And he was assigned to get a task force together as well under the CIA operative to research these UFO sightings that people were seeing.
And you know, if the president of the United States, Barbie, you know, starts putting together government agencies, these sightings were being taken very seriously, and they formed these different organizations. Specifically, the H.P. Robertson you just spoke of, his task force met for 3 days, during which they interviewed multiple military officers as well as Blue Book officials while reviewing photos and film of these UFO sightings. They concluded that there was no basis for these so-called UFO sightings, and no threat was posed to our national security. So I'm thinking, if they had all these photos and film and decided there was no threat that was posed to us, you know, what was their concern for the hysteria? Did not report the photos' accuracy. And I'm sure, you know, just normal people would feel the same way. Well, you've got it on film, you've got photos. Is it possible they just didn't report it accurately? we really don't know the full truth as citizens. And Barbie, I'm sure you would agree. I mean, you've got photos and you've got film, and they're saying nothing to worry about. So what is this that we're seeing?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's interesting that the report of these findings was not declassified until 1979. So it would rule out being worried about mass hysteria. I would think, I mean, if the president was concerned with hysteria, wouldn't it have been better to go ahead and report that there were no threats? Why didn't they do that? It's almost like they wanted it to stay out there.
Mm.
Um, what do you think, Barbie?
I don't understand why they would wait till 1979 to declassify that information. If President Truman was concerned about hysteria, to me, it would seem like they would be like, okay, guys, we've done reports. There's nothing to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't. So that was interesting in itself. But and because it took them so long to declassify the information, that started conspiracy theories like crazy. I mean, major conspiracy theories. And then over the next 17 years, from 1952 to 1969, Project Blue Book compiled a report of 12,618 UFO sightings or events related to these sightings. They eventually were able to classify more than 90% of these as identified, meaning that they were a known astronomical, atmospheric, or was man-made. They were able to determine what 90% of these came from and what caused it. But the 700 cases that were stated to be unidentified or not enough information to assign an even known cause, because of that, in 1966, the Air Force requested another committee to be formed and to investigate 59 of those UFO sightings that had been investigated by the Blue Book Committee. It was headed by a guy named Dr. Edward Condon, and he released what was called the Condon Report, and that was in 1968. And he says, the report stated there was no evidence of any unusual activity and recommended that the Air Force stop investigating the sightings. So that officially ended the Blue Book Project in 1969. And these recommendations was in addition to the number of UFO sightings reduced dramatically and no evidence to support a UFO theory. So at that point in time, it was recommended just to stop all research.
Mm-hmm. And what's funny about this, though, Barbie, is that it didn't stop the civilians. And they were called ufologists from doing their own investigation. And they were not satisfied with these reports. In 1974, an astronomer by the name of Alan Hynek, who served as an advisor for the Project Blue Book, created the Center for UFO Studies. And they also call it's an abbreviation, CUFOS. This organization continues today. It's still in place. Hynek is credited to giving the term close encounters. I know we had a movie by that name as well. It was not just the U.S. conducted investigations into UFO sightings, but there were also other countries, Canada, UK, Australia, Greece, and Sweden as well. And in January of 1979, the British House of the Lords held a debate on this subject, requesting the public be made aware of what they knew about UFOs. But this was defeated. So the public was not informed. It's funny, the public just doesn't seem to be informed on all the stuff that's going on. And Barbie, you keep going and tell us a little bit more about it.
You figure they're actually the ones reporting all these sightings. However, there's a lot of military pilots and ones out in the ocean on submarines and whatnot that reported sightings as well. It wasn't just the average citizen, it was also military. And, I find it interesting that the astronomer, Alan Hynek, he served as an advisor on the Project Blue Book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if the Project Blue Book was dissolved in 1969 because of lack of evidence, I find it interesting that someone from that organization would continue.
Mm-hmm. If there wasn't some truth to it,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So you got two choices. Did he continue the research because he really did see that there was some truth? I would have to do some research on him. Or did he continue it because he knew it was a way to make money?
Yep. Very possible.
Because he knew people were so interested in it,
Mm-hmm.
And being that he came from the Blue Book, people were going to listen to him. I don't know. It's interesting, or did he know more than they were letting us know? And so, also, this was interesting. There was a British journalist by the name of David Clark who made a discovery when he was doing research at the UK's National Archives in 2001. Even though there had been multiple officials denying the existence of UFOs, he discovered documents that reference top secret UK government UFO, and this is, government UFO investigations. This was he found the 6-page report from the Ministry of Defense Science Intelligence, which is equivalent to the United States' CIA.
Mm-hmm.
This report was dated in 1951, which was during the times that they were doing so much research. There was a 5-member team that had been assembled, and they were called the Flying Saucer Working Party. The team dismissed all sightings by experienced military personnel as either mistaken identification of a conventional aircraft, optical illusions and psychological delusions, known astronomical or meteorological phenomenons, or deliberate hoaxes. The team concluded the only way to get substantial data was to continuously photographing the sky for aberrations. In other words, keeping a nice big telescope with a camera and just constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And then you gotta, and then it has to be in the right spot because, you could be taking pictures here and the UFO is over there. So that was not cost effective. And so they did the same thing that the United States Blue Book Committee and all that did. And they decided that they were advised to stop investigating. And so,
Yep. And Barbara, to add to that, since the first UFO sighting 75 years ago, multiple UFO spotting groups have formed and have multiple chapters across the United States. Many movies and TV shows involving aliens and UFOs became popular and are still popular today. We have things like Star Trek, Star Wars, The X-Files, books, and even I Love Lucy had an episode where Lucy and Ethel play Martians.
Mm-hmm.
So why our UFO sightings went from conspiracy theory to now the government, internet, news sources are talking about the reality of UFOs and aliens now. It's been denied for so many years, and now since 2020 releases of film footage by the Pentagon of these strange occurrences they have released, some being from a camera on board of a U.S. Navy FA-18 Super Hornet. 1/3 of Americans believe that UFOs have visited us by other planets. The U.S. intelligence agencies and the Defense Department are not required to report on what they know about unusual aerial phenomena because of a stipulation in the massive COVID-19 relief and government funding bill that Congress approved. There is a section titled Advanced Aerial Threats and instructs the federal agencies to report any airborne object that has not been identified. I bet a lot of y'all didn't know that because I didn't until Barbie kind of put this together for us. Barbie, keep going.
I didn't know either. I didn't either, and I thought it was interesting. Why put that in the bill for something that has to do with a VIRUS? Why put that in there if there's not something
Mm-hmm.
You know, that, why even talk about it? I don't know. But I'll tell you what, though, from 2017, 8% of the UFO sightings have not been identified and are unexplained. In 2019, the Navy established a standardized UAP or UFO reporting system, and it was fully adopted in 2020. Interesting that it was fully adopted in 2020, the same time the VIRUS came out. There's been an increase in events in the last 2 years. The report focuses on reports by military pilots and those registered on aircraft sensors, including radar, infrared, electro-optical, and weapon seekers. The sensors can provide accurate information regarding the relative size, shape, structure, velocity, and range. Out of 144 reports, 143 have remained unexplained. Many media outlets are reporting that UFO sightings have increased since 2020. We could go on and on and on about all these reports, alien abductions, UFO sightings, and all that, but we would literally be here all week because there is a lot of information. So let's move on to what we believe UFOs, aliens, and sightings what we believe they are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And if you have been watching our Revelation 101 series, you'll know that we did a video on the history of Israel. And if not, that's okay. However, if you have time, I would watch it. And you will find it under our playlist in the Revelation 101 tab. We find it interesting that the UN recognized Israel as a nation in 1947, and Israel officially became a nation in 1948. And just remember, that's also when the first UFO sighting occurred. We also did a video on Israel being the fig tree generation that Jesus speaks about in Matthew 24. It's another great video explaining how Jesus speaks about the last generation, that we will not pass until all these things he speaks about in the Olivet Discourse comes to pass. Israel is the fig tree generation that Jesus teaches about. And the last generation started when Israel became a nation in 1948.
Yeah, I find it interesting that UFOs started at the same time Israel became a nation, and which is the fig tree generation, which is the last generation that Jesus talks about. And all of a sudden, you've got these UFO sightings. Now, if we went into it and really, really did even more research, there were some UFO sightings prior to 1948, but they're not recorded. They're not, and there's not a lot. There is some. So it shows that there was something going on even before 1948, but it really became big and known in 1948.
But became mainstream. Everybody knew. Yep.
Yeah. Once that guy reported it, in June of 47, that's when it really became big. But prior, there was a few. Okay, so now I want to read Revelation 12 to you guys, and I'm reading it from the Amplified Version. And I want you to listen to this close and see what you think. All right, so then another sign of warning was seen in the heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, who was Satan, with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads were 7 royal crowns, and his tail swept across the sky and dragged away a third of the stars of heaven and flung them to the earth. And the dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she may give birth, he might devour her child. And she gave birth to a son, a male child, destined to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up to God and to his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God, so that she would be nourished there for 1,260 days or 42 months. Now that's where the woman is Israel. And that's referring to Israel when the Antichrist comes on the scene. He's going to kill them. And so God has prepared a place in the wilderness for them to go for 1,260 days to be protected. And that's what he's talking about. Okay, so while Israel is running into the wilderness, okay, there's still battles going on in heaven. Okay, you got that going on the earth, but you still got spiritual battles going on. And a war broke out in heaven, and Michael, the archangel, and his angels waging war with the dragon, who was Satan. The dragon and his angels fought, but they were not strong enough and did not prevail. And there was no longer a place found for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the age-old serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, he who continually deceives and seduces the entire inhabited world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our believing brothers and sisters has been thrown down at last. He who accuses them and keeps bringing charges of sinful behavior against them before our God day and night. Okay, so up to this time when Satan is cast out of heaven, he's allowed to go to heaven and bring sins to God if we haven't repented. Okay, so he is allowed to bring our sins to God and say, look what Barbie did, look what Barbie did, look what she said. And if I hadn't repented of it, then Jesus can't defend us. But if we repented, then Jesus can say, whoa, 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 she's covered by the blood of me. Back up my child, you know, and that's obviously, of course, if we've been saved. So that's what's going on. Satan's been kicked out of heaven now, and his angels, you know, his demons, his angels. And so now they've been cast out. And so he can't go to heaven anymore on behalf of us and say anything bad. And so, and then they overcame and conquered him because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their testimony. For they did not love their life and renounce their faith even when faced with death. Therefore, rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them, in the presence of God. What of the earth and the sea? Because the devil was come down to you in great wrath, knowing that he only has a short time remaining. So, okay, one more. And when the dragon saw that he was thrown down to the earth, he persecuted the woman who had given birth to the male child, woman being Israel. But the 2 wings of the great eagle were given to the woman so that she could fly into the wilderness to her place where she was nourished for a time, times and a half of times, which is 1,260 days or 42 months or 3.5 years, away from the presence of the serpent who was Satan. And the serpent hurled water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, so that he may cause her to be swept away with a flood. A flood is an army. So he's going to send, or the Antichrist is going to, through Satan, is going to send an army after her to try to defeat her, her being Israel. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the river, which the dragon had hurled out of his mouth. So the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went off to wage war on the rest of her children's seed, those who had kept and obeyed the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus, holding firmly to it and bearing witness to him. That's the So when he's not able to get the Jews because they're hiding in the wilderness, he's coming after the Christians. And this is during the end times. So, okay, Flora, go on. I just wanted to read that because it's talking about where Satan is cast to the earth with his demons.
Thank you. I appreciate that. There are different reasons people have given regarding why we are being visited by aliens and why they are interested in us. One reason given is they want to help us. Another reason is that they want to help us with the environment, or maybe study us or change us. there have there's been a desire to advance us, including infusing us with their DNA. But this is important, and this is why we're talking on this. What does the Bible say? The Bible reveals there are many beings that did not originate on earth and are interested in mankind. These beings are not from other planets, though, but are spiritual beings who are evil and attempt to use deception and lying wonders to deceive us. Their goal is to change the will of God, who is the creator of the physical universe and everything that lives in it. The Bible shows a clear, different explanation than what ufologists believe. Um, and as we go through this, I hope that you're seeing this more and more. That's why, this is a Bible study. It's not just something we're doing for the fun of it. It's interesting, but we want you to see the other side of it as well. And Barbie, can you keep going on this for me?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, and it's definitely a sign that UFOs, I mean, it's definitely a sign that UFOs started being reported in 1947. Now, 1947 is when the UN recognized Israel as a nation.
Mm-hmm.
They became a nation in 1948. And then also with them being the fig tree generation, which makes it the last generation.
Mm-hmm.
The sightings made the public very aware of the fact there could be other life in the universe. Satan, we got to remember, Satan likes to confuse and deceive. So what better way than to create the thoughts of aliens? There have been sightings prior to 1946 reported. However, there's really no reporting on those. And one of the things about UFO sightings is they are typically reported by credible people, such as doctors, teachers, etc. But are they really UFOs, or is it Satan trying to deceive us?
Mm-hmm.
Typically, 93% of sightings can be explained, but what about the other 7%?
And that's a good question, Barbie. As Christians, we should take that 7% seriously. The majority are intelligent people. Several are Christians. Some claim they've been abducted, and sometimes more than once. But what about Satan's lying wonders? In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9 says, the coming of the Antichrist, the lawless one, is through the activity of Satan with great power, all kinds of counterfeit miracles and deceptive signs and false wonders, all of them lies. And 2 Corinthians 2:11 says to keep Satan from taking advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his schemes.
Yeah, and that's very true. You got to be so careful because he is here to deceive us. I mean, he's been here to deceive us since the beginning of time. I mean, it started with Adam and Eve. But even more so now when we get towards the end times, because he knows his time is short.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Satan knows the word of God better than anybody knows it.
Oh yeah, he does.
Better than a theologian, better than anyone. He knows that word. And he knows his time is short, and he will do whatever he can to deceive many, even the elite. We personally believe these sightings are encounters or fallen angels or demons masquerading as aliens from other planets, here to deceive and do the work of Satan by taking our focus off of God and our relationship with Jesus Christ. Satan is using this plan for the latter days when people will turn from God. The intelligence that Satan has is being used to deceive the many. He is being given limited permission to interact with humans and can exert much deceit on earth. During the end times, his deceit is going to be much worse. A spaceship traveling at the speed of light would need 100,000 years to travel from one end of our galaxy to another. Okay, that's at a speed, that's going, at the speed of light. Okay. And to get to the other galaxy and the next galaxy, they would need 2.5 million years to do that. Okay, so it's almost impossible that they've had time to get here. with the age of our earth,
Mm-hmm.
and,
I agree.
and you're talking, they started being reported 75 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Almost impossible if it's going to take 100,000 years just to get from one end of our galaxy. So if they started at the other end of our galaxy and got here, it'd be 100,000 years. And then just to get to the next galaxy, 1,000,000 years. It's
Yep.
impossible. And that's going at the speed of light. What is that, like Mach 9, not Mach 5 or something? Pretty fast.
Mm-hmm. And Barbie, regardless of how many planets and stars there are, God has given the credit for all of his creation. In John 1:3, and then in Isaiah 40:26, it says, "Lift up your eyes on high, and behold who hath created these things, that bringeth out their host by number. He calleth them all by names, by the greatness of his might. For he is strong in power, not one faileth." Nehemiah 9:6 says God makes the starry host. Deuteronomy 10:14, we see where God created the highest heavens. Genesis chapter 2, verse 1, God created the heavens, and it is the physical universe that declares the glory of God. Although God created everything we see and know about, it does not mean he could not have created other universes. However, no place in the Bible does it say this. I recommend reading the Fermi-Drake paradox, which gives a great explanation using a mathematical expression formulated to attempt to estimate the probability of locating intelligent life in the universe. The conclusion is, if there is other life, humans would have the evidence by now. The absence of this evidence is evidence in itself. And what I've just went over with you, we are giving you the biblical verses. And if you're thinking, I'm not sure what to think about this Bible study, get your Bible out, pray, ask for God to give you discernment. Barbie, what else would you like to add to that?
This was just an incredibly interesting and fun study to do, because I'll be honest with you, I've always been fascinated. I started as a kid. I would watch, Casper the Friendly Ghost. I watched Scooby-Doo. I love the Jetsons. I like anything that had to do with other type of things, other dimensions, other types of life or whatever. And then as I got older, I was a Trekkie. Love my Star Trek. I never on Star Wars. I've seen all the movies, but I wasn't that big on it. But I was always into all that. And so I always would say, if God can create life on earth, he can create it anywhere. Well, watching those shows and stuff, it made me realize that's just deception. The word does not say it. And if the word doesn't say it, we have to believe it's not true. Now, are we saying that all these people, intelligent people out there that have had experiences with aliens, abductions, or UFO sightings, are we saying they're crazy and they're not seeing anything? Highly believe they are seeing things. I highly believe they are, having some sort of an abduction, but I don't think it's from another alien. I think it's from Satan. I think it's demons. If you're not in the word and you're not praying to God and putting on your full armor every day, it's very easy to be deceived. I was deceived big time. And, up until 2 years ago, I believe that there was definitely aliens and stuff and ghosts and all these other things. I love to watch the ghost shows and, and then I realized, no, that's just Satan's way of deceiving you. That's what he's here to do. He lies, steals, and deceives. That's just who he is. He lies to you, he steals your joy, and he deceives you so that you are fooled. So do I think these people who have been abducted by aliens or have seen a UFO are crazy or whatever? No. No, I totally believe they are seeing things and are experiencing things. It's just not aliens, it's demons.
I agree. I
Mhm.
agree.
And so you got to be so careful. You got to be so careful. And yeah, and I'm sorry, it's just demons manifesting themselves as aliens to confuse us and take our focus off of God and his son Jesus Christ. That's
Mhm.
Satan's job. His job is not really to go after Christians so much as it is, I'm sorry, after the lost, but to go after Christians. That's why we know that there's a lot of Christians that have said they've had alien injections.
Mhm.
If you're one of those
One thing
people,
I'd like to add, one thing I'd like to add right there, Barbie, is he actually comes after the Christians, I think, a little bit more than the non-believers, because the non-believers are technically on his side. They haven't accepted Jesus. He wants Christians to fall away from God and Jesus. Um, you know, Nothing excites him more than seeing us sin. And that's the way you got to look at it. He's not. I mean, yeah, he's going after the non-believers, but his target's us. He wants us to fall from grace and sin.
And if you're a backslidden Christian and you're not in the Word, and you're just like I was a backslidden Christian. I wasn't in the Word, and so I was deceived. I mean, I wanted to go to Area 51. I wanted to do all those things and find, because I wanted to see all that stuff. I thought it was cool. I mean, I've always been fascinated, even as a child.
And I agree. And actually, I have been to Area 51. For those of you who don't know, I used to drive with my husband over the road, and we had a delivery near Area 51, and we actually stopped. And I'm going to be honest with you, it wasn't really what I was expecting. It was almost comical in some ways. It's it's not what people, like Barbie said, we believe it's more, Satan attacking people. It's not actually alien abductions. But, of course, you can't get into Area 51. All we could see were the things around it. But it was cartoonish. It wasn't what I thought it would be.
I've heard that from several people.
Yeah, it's more of just getting your money and wanting you to buy the merchandise. I mean, that's pretty much, because you can't get anywhere near Area 51. It's blocked off. But I have been there, and like I said, it's kind of comical. But yes, we do believe that these are very highly intelligent people that are seeing things. And it's everyone, not just highly intelligent, but we firmly believe it's Satan attacking. And
yeah, because he doesn't want you to know that it's him and his demons. He don't want you to know that, so he's going to put your focus on something else, and he's going to do it on aliens. That's what he does. And so that's why we did this particular video, because we've been seeing so much on the government now coming out and showing. I'm sure most of y'all have seen that video but you can't really see much. It's very grainy, of that video that came from the pilot on the Air Force plane, and, I mean, it's very grainy, but they're still showing things, and yeah. And you got to remember too that when it's becoming the end times, God clearly tells us that you will see signs, and so does Jesus. You will see signs in the heavens. Right? And Satan knows the Bible better than anyone. So why wouldn't he put signs in the heaven? Okay.
One other thing I'd like to mention too, Barbie, that we haven't referenced in this, but we all believe that we are living in the last generation, that we're going to see the rapture soon. But you got to kind of think too, it's kind of funny the government all of a sudden's recognizing aliens and things like that. What are people that are left behind after the rapture? How are they going to explain all these people disappearing? And I know me and Barbie have talked about this before. What better way to explain it than the aliens got all of us? Yeah.
And it's interesting that they started admitting to it in 2020. at the same time the virus came out, which is a pestilence.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And everything that's happened since then, wars and rumors of wars,
Mm-hmm.
famine coming on the scene. You know, you got all these things happening. So yeah, it all ties together.
Yep, they do. And I'm just going to stress this. You know, read your Bible. Ask God for discernment. Look at we actually have a video on this too, and I'm not promoting just our video. I'm telling you, pick up your Bible and study too.
Definitely.
But we do
Use
have
your
a
own
video.
discernment, do your own research.
Yep.
Pray
We
to
do have
God,
a
ask
video.
Him.
We do have a video though that go over the seals and the trumpets and the bowls and the wrath. Especially look at your seals right now, and you can't tell me when you read and study that you're not seeing some of the things we are. You know, you see your news every day. It's on your phone or you watch it on TV. Some of the seals may have opened. We don't know that for sure. But especially the first three, we're seeing a lot of the signs of the seven. And it's in your Bible, folks. Pick up your Bible. If you don't want to trust what we're telling you, we encourage you. You need to study on your own. Anything else you got, Barbie?
I'm good. I think we can go ahead and say goodbye now. And
Okay.
this one uploaded, and then we got a couple more we're going to be working on. So you guys are going to have a bunch this week. We appreciate you stopping by. Leave us a comment, please. Tell us what you think about this. Tell us if you've heard anything else that maybe we hadn't heard about. Whatever you want to do. You know,
Yep. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. All right. You got anything else, Flora? I'm ready. I'm ready if you are.
I think that's it.
All
Thank
right.
you,
Y'all
guys.
have a good one. We'll see you soon. Maranatha.
Bye.